Day today. So it's lovely of you to join us on World Book Day. I hope you're all having good World Book Days. I'm Sarah Mears. I'm the Programme Director for Libraries Connected. Just doing very quick housekeeping to say that if you could keep your microphones on mute just while the presenters are speaking, that would be really helpful. We are recording today's webinar, so we'll be able to share the link with you afterwards, but so that means if you don't want to be on camera, feel free to turn your cameras off, but the speakers always enjoy having some people to look at when they're speaking, so if you're comfortable having your camera on, please do keep it on. I think that's really all I need to say for now. I'll be talking to you a bit more about why Libraries Connected are endorsing the toolkit in a little while, but first of all I'm going to hand over to James Urquhart from Arts Council England.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks for inviting me to say a few words by way of introduction. I'm James Urquhart. I'm the Director of Literature at the Arts Council, but also Senior Manager for Libraries. I'm bringing really positive vibes from our Director for Libraries, Luke Burton, who sadly isn't able to be here today. I'd just like to echo Sarah's introduction. Happy World Book Day. It feels like a really auspicious date to be launching the Why Reading Matters Local Authority Toolkit and talking about how libraries are brilliant at supporting reading across all ages. The Arts Council has a very strong partnership with both the Reading Agency and Libraries Connected. We co-fund both organisations and hugely value their national leadership, as well as delivery of library-led activities and a huge breadth of resources. The Reading Agency spoke to us in December about doing a very specific piece of work to enable libraries to make a strong case, both locally and nationally, about how effectively their activities supported reading and direct beneficial outcomes such as literacy, but also a host of other national and local authority priorities from well-being to growth. This approach seemed really valuable to us and offered a cost-efficient, pragmatic resource to help libraries make the most of work they were already doing or planning. We managed to find funding for this work, which the Reading Agency turned around in super quick time, producing an advocacy toolkit that fitted the bill very soon after Christmas. And many thanks again to Libraries Connected for their part in supporting this quick, targeted work and for hosting today's webinar. So urgency is important. We've all seen the last couple of years' data around declining appetites for reading, particularly amongst young people. And now the Go All In campaign, driving this National Year of Reading, is providing increasing momentum and public discourse, focusing on both the joys of reading and the life-changing impact that regular reading from an early age can provide. Libraries are operating in a context of financial pressure and tough local authority decisions, increasing emphasis on outcomes-based funding and commissioning, and competing priorities across councils. But it's vital to get across that reading isn't just a nice to have. It underpins education and skills, health and well-being, economic participation, place-based outcomes, and so many other attributes. The National Year of Reading creates a timely opportunity to make this case clearly and confidently. Libraries are experts in delivering reading activities, resources, opportunities and nourishment. They already deliver against local authority priorities, but the impact isn't always articulated in ways decision makers respond to. Advocacy is about using evidence effectively, speaking the language of partners and commissioners, and being clear about what libraries are asking for and why. And that's exactly why we invested in this toolkit. We saw a real need for a practical, evidence-based advocacy tool, something libraries could use in real conversations and not just read. Something that was both accessible and user-friendly, and that gave ideas and themes that could make advocacy a bit simpler for libraries to pick up and run with. The toolkit brings together strong national evidence, clear messages, practical templates and examples, and it supports libraries to be more confident, consistent and strategic in their advocacy. I sincerely hope you find this a light touch, practical asset that helps to support your conversations and messaging. With that, I'd like to hand back to Sarah Mears from Libraries Connected.
Thanks very much, James, and yeah, thank you for supporting the toolkit. And it's great for us at Libraries Connected to be working with our partners at the Reading Agency who developed this exciting toolkit. We're really in support of the toolkit because we know from heads of service that everyone knows what a difference library makes, but it's about how do we articulate that difference and how do we make sure we make the most of all of the stuff that we know that libraries do when we're talking to decision makers. So I think this toolkit's really powerful because it helps libraries translate the impact into language that local government understands. It supports both senior leaders and frontline staff, and is also very practical, and it's adaptable to your own circumstances and very evidence-led. So it aligns closely with the Universal Library reading offer. So, we're very in support of the toolkit through the reading offer. And one of our speakers today is Katie Gled, who's just about to take over as the reading offer lead. It supports the Children's Promise and, of course, the Local Authority Outcomes Framework. And it builds on previous work that we've done at Libraries Connected. We produced a couple of years ago now, Advocacy, a Beginner's Guide. So it takes those advocacy principles into action, and hopefully will give you something very concrete to use in meetings and in emails and presentations. So today we're hoping to have quite a practical session. We were going to have some breakout rooms, but we've decided with there are so many people on the call that would probably cause teams to explode. So we're not going to do that, but we will ask you to put stuff in chat and just to be as interactive as possible. We'll be giving you some real examples from library services, and hopefully as well time to think about your own local context and priorities. I believe we're starting with a poll. Karina, are you leading on the poll? So and I should just also introduce my colleague Lauren, who has set up the poll for us. Lauren's from Libraries Connected, and she's the technical person today. So thanks very much to Lauren. So I'll hand over to Karina and Lauren.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Sarah. And thank you, James, both of you for your support and also for your kind words today on value of what this can do and how it can fit into the work you're doing. The poll that we're doing is an interesting one. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the mapping that helped shape the direction that we went into with what sections are covered as part of the toolkit. But one of the key questions that kept coming up for us is, who are the main audiences that you need to speak to? Who exactly is it that you need to make the case to? So we've got that big sense of how you can make the case, but who are you making that case to? So we have a little poll to help try and find out. And hopefully Lauren will be able to activate that. There we are. So I'll give you all just a moment to try to fill in the poll. And I think that should take you to a Microsoft Forms site. Maybe, Lauren, you can let me know what it looks like people have.
No, of course, yeah. So we've got some responses coming in. So yeah.
What's it look? I can't see the I can't see the responses. I'm so sorry. What's it looking like?
Let me hold on. I can share my screen quickly, and then we can look as it comes in.
Thank you. The suspense.
There you go. Thanks, Lauren.
Okay, so who do you most need to influence locally? It looks like elected councillors are coming out top here. Oh, sorry, budget holders are coming out top, followed by elected councillors, public health and education, both having a few numbers there, and other. Anybody want to pop in the chat who those others are? No option for all, yes. Okay, so I see some tick all that apply would probably have been useful here. Library non-users, I see also coming into the chat there. All of them, other people are agreeing with all of them as an option there. And budget holders, are we thinking of that within the library service or within those different council departments? Other council departments and comms, people are saying. Councils. Thanks so much. Senior council management, other council departments. Council leaders. Sarah, did you have anything else, or shall I get started?
Yeah, that's brilliant. So public health are also an important part now. I think that's true, isn't it? That public health is becoming more and more important for libraries as well.
Excellent.
So I think once we've got that, we'll send that around, shall we? That poll once everyone's completed it, if they haven't already. That
would be great, and thank you all for filling that in, and for us as well as we think think about how we shape the next steps of this work and where additional outputs might be useful. Then we can think about who those key audiences are. But with all of them being a key audience, then it seems that the approach that we've taken might be the best, where it's a bit tailorable in terms of that content. So I will share my screen, and what I'm going to be doing is giving just a bit of a walkthrough on the toolkit itself, and then my colleagues are going to join me here. I'm sorry, I should have introduced myself. I'm Karina Spalding. I'm head of research and evaluation at the Reading Agency. I'm joined here today by a couple of my colleagues on the research and evaluation team, Becky Norton and Kate Onersall. And they will be speaking a little bit about how to tailor that content locally. And then we've got a couple case studies in, as Sarah mentioned. So really pleased to be able to share those as well today. But I will let Alex introduce those when we get to the second section there. So walkthrough of the toolkit. If you haven't been familiar with the toolkit yet, I think most of you probably are here, but this is what it looks like on the front cover there. Again, wanted to thank Arts Council England for their support for this, but also Libraries Connected, both on the support and dissemination side from Libraries Connected, but also really on the conceptual side, as Sarah and colleagues played a really key role in helping us shape what this looked like and what was really needed across the sector. So this started from a lot of conversations really about a buzz and excitement about the National Year of Reading, but also what was needed to help effectively make that case locally. So a sense that the National Year of Reading provided a point for everybody to center around and have a lot of messaging around reading, but really that question of why reading. And libraries and other partners told us how frustrating that they were finding it to make that case locally. So people seeing, as James said, seeing reading as a nice to have or as an aspect that was viewed solely as the library's domain or the school's domain, but not the business of everybody. So we've been doing some thinking around this and testing of how we can make that case locally through our library-led reading strategy offer, which Fiona Turm from the London Borough of Camden is going to be speaking about later. But what we wanted to do with this piece was have something that could be used nationally and tailored locally to make it clear how reading is everyone's business. It's everyone's business in that we're all able to support it and able to deliver it, but it also delivers things for all of us and for every area of a council service, but also even for aspects like local businesses. So to provide libraries with the evidence on reading as linked to local priorities, but as James said, presenting that evidence in language that resonates with local authority decision makers. So we know that something that might resonate within the library service or within the reading agency might not resonate outside of that. So we wanted to put it in that language that really helps those budget holders and that key audience for you all as budget holders to understand how reading saves money, how it builds capacity, and how it does that by improving outcomes and reducing pressure on services. We developed it based on feedback from the sector, but also in collaboration with our library partners. So that included a big group of people, our National Year of Reading Libraries Consortium, including Libraries Connected, CILIP, Libraries Rising, SLICS, SILIPS, SCL Cymru, and the British Library, and Welsh Government there as well. And there was a real agreement across that group that this was needed, but it didn't need to reinvent what was already out there. So our main principle for it was to build on existing models, build on existing templates, and not reinvent the wheel. There's so much great work out there that it was about drawing it all together in one place, having this one-stop shop for the evidence with really, really practical guidance and tools. And what came through in those conversations especially was that in this environment where libraries are already so stretched in terms of capacity and in terms of resource, we wanted to make something for libraries that was concise, clear to use, and robust evidence that can effectively be copy-pasted in. So you can pick and choose what you need, but you don't need to rewrite it. You can just use it as it is. And then with just small tweaks needed to be fit for purpose locally. Our aim for this, as I said, was to help libraries and their partners make the case for reading as a powerful tool for local change, to help them support advocacy, partnership conversations, and funding opportunities during this National Year of Reading, but also beyond that. This is very much future-facing as well. And the toolkit then includes things like headline evidence, adaptable key messages, real-world examples, templates, and evaluation tools. So I will take you through the sections now. This will be a little bit of a whistle-stop tour through these, but the toolkit starts with navigation information. So the key sections are linked to on that top page, so that you can jump down to where you need. So you can, you're not having to scroll through the whole time, but you can just pop down to each of those sections. Each of the sections has their little header at the top, so you know where you are in the toolkit. The priorities that we selected were based on a really detailed mapping process, as well as conversations with libraries and other local authorities. And because those different priorities are called different things, outcomes are called different things in lots of different places, we grouped all of those into 5 areas to try to make it a little bit more manageable. So areas where there were common names, common challenges, common outcomes across them. And those 5 areas are language, literacy, and learning, employment and economic growth, health and well-being, belonging and connections, and a fairer world. And that is really more around community cohesion and those types of outcomes. The navigation section there also includes clear definitions around what this refers to, that we're talking about reading for pleasure here, not solely literacy, and an outline of steps on how to use the evidence, as well as how to tailor it for your local context and communities, and how to tailor it for different audiences. So public health are going to have different priorities than a local business partner might have. So moving into the different sections, each of those 5 sections, those priority area sections, are structured in the exact same way. So each of the sections starts out with a little overview on what that broad priority might be called locally. So we know that there are different names for the same thing or different outcomes that might fall under that. So for example, literacy, language, and learning includes different outcomes like early speech and language development, improving social care and SEND outcomes, reducing the attainment gap. So those are the things that you might see it called in your area. And also who in your council might be most interested in that. So what types of services or partners you might be speaking to, or who might be really interested in what those outcomes can provide. Then it goes straight into the evidence. So short snapshots of data and stats on what the need is within that priority area, and then how reading can help. So that's outlined with the need, and then the difference reading makes. The bolded areas are trying to give those key messages. So if you need just sort of one little sentence, with the more detailed statistics there included as context and a little bit more. If you're having more detailed conversations, then you can be armed with those stats. But we know that those stats might be even too detailed for some purposes. So we have the next section of those subsections, which boils down the evidence into 3 key messages. So it turns that evidence, those statistics, into really communicable short sentences that bring, the sort of the key points of those various areas of evidence. And then we also have an email template that can be used to communicate with your different audiences. And that's written very much in an email style or a letter style. And again, all of that can be copy pasted and adapted as needed. The references are there, the content is there, and it's indicated where you might need to tailor it locally. And then the sections also end with some examples of the library offer and the universal offers that it links to. That's by no means a comprehensive list of what's there. We know that libraries are delivering way, way more than that. It's just a starting point to get you thinking about your areas of work and which of your programs or delivery offers might link into that priority. But what would all that data and evidence be without some understanding of your own data and evidence and how you're directly contributing to those priorities and key outcomes? So the next sections of the piece give some brief guidance on how to evaluate and how to write a case study. So on the evaluation section, it's very much framed around what you can do, how you can measure reach, how you can measure impact, and how that impact might be measured in relation to those priority areas, but also a pick and choose type of structure, not suggesting that you should be including all of those, because we know that you want to make it short and snappy and really easy to use in your communities. And then finally, those all important other links. The toolkit then ends with links to other useful sources, as well as where to find your local data. In those other useful sources, there are things like the Libraries Connected Beginner's Guide to Advocacy, recent economic valuations, social return on investment valuations, so things that you can be able to use to measure the economic value of your work. Other repositories of data and evidence, because the evidence we presented here is by no means comprehensive. There's a lot more out there, but we didn't want to make it overwhelming, so it also signposts you to where you can find those other pieces of evidence. So from things like Empathy Lab or National Literacy Trust or World Book Day. And as most of the evidence included in this is national, we also have a section that links to where you can go to find your own local data. So this is, again, just sort of an overview of where you might find local data within each of those sections. And I will now pass over to my colleague, Becky, who's going to show you how to use and navigate that local data.
Hi, everybody. So I'm Becky Norton, as Karina said. I'm another member of the research and evaluation team at the Reading Agency. So in this part of the session, I'm going to try and walk you through kind of how to find and access local data using a link that appears in the toolkit itself. So when I share my screen in a moment, you're welcome to just watch what I do, or if you have a copy of the toolkit open and your laptop can cope with it without exploding, you can follow it along with me. But before I start, just kind of a quick note about the scope of the session. I think tutorials generally can be quite difficult to, I guess, design and pitch at the right level when you've got a very large group of people. So of course, there will be things that I'm not able to cover during this time, and the data set that I'm using as a kind of follow along example might not be the one that you would choose. So generally, we'd love your feedback, obviously, on the webinar as a whole, but specifically also this tutorial component in terms of, you know, the level that it's been pitched at, or any ideas that you might have for future kind of similar how-to sessions where we can walk you through how to find and use local data. If you have any questions sort of while I'm going through this, if you could just pop them in the Q&A. Kate and Karina, I've been told, are going to man the Q&A for me and answer any questions that they're able to, and they can interrupt me as well if there's something that I might be able to show you whilst I'm going through everything. So let me just share my screen. Okay, is everybody able to see the language literacy and learning page of the toolkit?
Yep, that's showing up.
Perfect, thank you so much. Okay, so we're going to start, it's page 4, if you're following along with me, in the language literacy and learning section, and it's the first hyperlink that appears, so it's a shorthand for the Department for Education 2025. So if you click on this hyperlink, it will take you to this landing page for the early years foundation stage profile results. Now, in terms of why I've selected this link, again, as I said, it might not be the data set that you would choose, but it's purely because this is a government data set. So for a lot of reading advocacy work, you know, government data will be among the most kind of frequently used evidence. It's highly credible. It can be cut by local authority, although for this one, it's only for one nation, which is England, but that's not the case for all government data sets. And generally, data sets that are published on government platforms do tend to follow a relatively consistent structure. So if I can walk you through how to navigate this page and find your local data on this page, you should hopefully be able to apply that same knowledge to other locally relevant data sets, especially those that appear on government websites. So I'm not going to take you through the whole page, because as you can see, if I scroll down, it's quite long, and that's with all of these subsections collapsed, which can be pretty overwhelming. So I will just give you, I'll highlight a few of the notable features, and then I'll show you some shortcuts. So at the top of the page, you'll notice that there is a little banner that says this is the latest release. This is quite common with government data sets, especially when they're released on a schedule, so typically annually, and it just tells you that the information you're looking at is up to date, which is important. And obviously where this is not the case, this will usually be flagged in the same place, and it will often include a link to redirect you to the latest version in the series. Just below that, you just find a general summary, a top-line summary that tells you about, you know, the basic information about the data set, like when it was published, any relevant updates, links to other data sets in the same series, and so on. And helpfully, you can actually sign up for email alerts. So if you know that you're going to have an interest going forward in this particular data set, you will get notified whenever there are new releases or there are corrections or updates, for example. So in terms of cutting through all of this noise and finding out how do we extract what we want and how do you look at your local data, for some web pages, especially those that are not government web pages, you may have to scroll a little bit, and it will take you a little while. So, but there are specific keywords that you can look for. Basically, anything that mentions data is usually a good place to start. So sometimes it might be data catalog, sometimes it might be raw data, it might be explore data. But thankfully, for a lot of the government data sets, they have this useful panel over here called quick links. So that is exactly what the name suggests. It gives you shortcuts that you'll be most likely to use when you're wanting to look at locally relevant data. Now, when I click on Explore Data, it basically just scoots me further down the page and to this section that is most relevant for our purposes, so explore data and files used in this release. Again, you have 4 options here, so I'm just going to kind of walk you through where it makes sense to start, because this can be pretty overwhelming if you're unfamiliar with either this data set or just this process overall. So one of the places that I would recommend starting is with data guidance. Now, it will give you sort of much needed kind of context, not just about the broad things like what data is collected in this series and why, but also just kind of concrete practical tips once you download the data set about how to navigate every file. So it'll include explainers of how to interpret various shorthand symbols and variable names. So what I would typically do, because it opens in the same browser, is just copy the URL, open a new browser, and just paste it in there, and so that I've basically got it there for reference for later, and then I can go back to explore data and files used in this release, so I can just have it open in my browser ready for when I stumble across something that I don't understand. Now, in terms of actually downloading your data, with government websites, this is part of the reason why they're so overwhelming. There are lots of different ways to achieve the same end. So you can see that you have the option of viewing or creating your own tables, browsing through a data catalog, or downloading all of the data. Now, downloading all of the data sounds like what we want, but I would caution you not to do this if you're quite new to the area, because it is useful if you want to be able to view everything, not just the data for your local authority, and it might seem like the most intuitive place to start, but for this data series alone, it involves downloading no fewer than 8 files, 9 if you include the data guidance, and many of these have around 80 to 90,000 rows of data, so that can be really, really overwhelming. So I'll come back to that in a little bit, but to begin with, a nice user-friendly option is to create your own tables, and it basically just means that you can download a table of figures that is specific to what you want to see. So it might be figures that are specific to your region or local authority, or which focuses only on the variables that you're interested in, such as literacy rather than numeracy. So as you can see, when you click on create your own tables, step 1 has already been finished. It's been completed because of the fact that we've navigated to this table tool via our early years foundation stage landing page. So this has already been completed. Now, this step 2 goes back to what I mentioned earlier. Within this release, there are 8 tables, not including the guidance files. And so you have to decide which one do I need. In the interest of time, I know that table 2 is the one that is probably most relevant to most of us in the room. But when you're doing this on your own, you will have to do a little bit of scrolling and scouting just to see, which one is most relevant for your purposes. When you click on each individual table, a summary of what the data set is, what it contains, will come up, and that will help you navigate and figure out which table do I need. Now, once I've done this, we can see some details about what the data set contains, and we can also see down here, what would you like to do? I've got 2 different options again. Now, one of the things that is probably the most user-friendly is to create your own table. So that's what we're going to do first. But if we've got time towards the end, I will bring you back here again, and I'll show you what it means when you download the full data set as well. So when you hit create your own table, again, you can see that we've got steps 1 and 2 completed. And now what we need to do is narrow things down a little bit. So we're starting helpfully with geography. What level of detail do we want to look at? I'm going to go for local authority. I just want to look at my local authority, which in my case is Lancashire. So you can type that into the search bar and it will come up, and I'm just going to select Lancashire, and you can see obviously it's shown me here that I've got 1 local authority selected. Now, obviously you can play around with these and you can select which geographic filters are most relevant for your purposes, but for simplicity, I'm just going to stick with local authority. And then we can move on to our next step. Now, with the releases of this kind, where we've had similar data sets that are published year on year, you will have a choice of time periods. So for simplicity, I'm going to choose the last 2 academic years, so 2023 to 24 and 24 to 25, and then I can compare, I can do a year-on-year comparison with the figures that I want to look at. So then I hit next step. And then now we're going to have a look at our filters. So this is a part where if you're completely unfamiliar with the data set, the data guidance will come in handy. If you're not 100% sure what some of these indicators mean, or you just don't recognize the language, if you go back to your data guidance, it does have a file by file breakdown of some of this terminology, just to enable you to understand what it is that you're looking at. Now, obviously, because I've looked at this before, I know that I want to look at the number of children who are at the emerging level, the percentage of children who are at the emerging level, and the overall number of children in relation to a specific subject or early learning goal. So that's what I'm going to stick with. And then as we scoot further down, we can see we've got these other categories that we can use to filter our data. So if I expand early learning goal, we've got quite a few. You can see you can do overall. But given that we're looking at the language literacy and learning section, I am going to scoot down until I find literacy. And again, you can break it down if you like into component parts of literacy, like comprehension, word reading, or writing. But for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to go with literacy overall and select all learning goals. Now, to get that out of my way, if I click this, it will just collapse it. And then I can look at my final set of categories that I want to filter by. So I'm going to just start broad and go with total. So I just want to look at the overall figures for my local authority. But you can also select other characteristics if you like. So say we want to compare the figures for girls and boys, I can select these 2 as well. Whilst you're familiarizing yourself with how this looks and how the data is structured, I would always recommend you go broad and then go narrow once you're a little bit more comfortable with the structure of the data set. If you go too narrow too soon, it can get a little bit overwhelming. So okay, I've selected everything that I need, and you can go back up and review what it is that you've selected and what filters you've selected. But if you're ready, you just hit Create Table. So as you can see, it's actually generated a table that I can access on my browser. So if that's enough for my purposes, and I don't actually have to download anything if I don't want to, if I decide that I've gone a little bit too broad or a little bit too narrow with any of my filters, I can scoot back up the page and I can just edit those filters and recreate the table. And as you come a little bit further down, if you want to see your table in a bit more detail, you can pop it out so that you can see the numbers a bit more clearly. And you can also generate a shareable link that you can share with colleagues in your organization, just so that you're all looking at the same data set, in essence. Now, if you want to download the data set, for example, because you want to generate tables or charts, or you just want to work on a copy offline, then you can choose your preferred file format and hit Download Table. It should come up here. And hopefully this will load. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So that's what the file will look like. And as you can see, it does not contain 90,000 rows. So that's not too overwhelming, hopefully. And yeah, I think this general method is really user-friendly and brilliant when you want to customize exactly what you want your table to look like and you know what it is that you're looking for. Now, in terms of kind of method 2, as it were, I'm going to go back to our landing page that we're on the beginning. I'm going to use my quick links to go back down to explore data. I'm going to avoid this option purely because, again, I don't want to download 8 files. I want to download one specific. I want to pre-apply filters. I want to download the whole data set. So if we go via view or create your own tables, I'm going to go back, I'm going to select the data set that we used before, the exact same data set, but this time I'm going to select download full data set. This will work. Sometimes it might take a little bit of time. And it should pop open in your file explorer. One thing I like to do my future self a favor is to make sure that this is saved in a place where I can actually easily find it later on. To do this, I just go to my downloads and then I drag and drop this onto my desktop. And you can see it appears here because sometimes it will save in a non-intuitive place and then you go back to try and find it later and you can't find it. The other thing that I will tend to do is extract the data from the compressed file, because if you don't, sometimes if you start trying to make changes, they won't save, which can be really frustrating. So when you click on the zipped file, just hit extract all and extract, and then it will take me straight into the relevant folder. So now you can see when I do this, the data guidance is downloaded as an additional folder, so you can actually access that offline as well. And then if we go in here, we can have a look at our data set, if it will load. Now this data set is the one that I was sort of explaining earlier, can look quite overwhelming. This one has close to 90,000 rows. It has what look like a large number of columns with no data in at all, but there is a reason for that. But it can also be just a little bit more flexible if you want to create charts, if you want to look at data from your local authority, but also neighbouring local authorities. If you just want to play around with the data a little bit more, it can be a bit more flexible. But a nice, easy way to kind of cut through this and make it a bit less overwhelming is if you just click on a cell and then hold down Control and then A, it should select everything that's in the spreadsheet. And then if you hit Format as Table, choose your preferred color scheme. I'm a big fan of teal. Make sure that you have My Table Has Headers selected, because we do have headers in this table. And then you end up with a fully filterable table. And so what you would need to do then to find the data that you need is a similar process of going through from column to column and filtering what you need. So I'm going to go for the academic year 2024 to 25. For the geographic level, I'm going to go for local authority.
Becky, I'm so sorry. I'm just going to interrupt you. Your screen is frozen. So we can't see, we can hear you still, but we can't see what you're doing. So just to let you know.
No, thank you for telling me. Let's see if I just reshare. See if you can see what I see. Are you able to see this?
It looks like it's loading.
Okay.
I have confidence that within 10 seconds we'll be able to see it.
We've done quite well so far for Teams not to throw a wobble.
It looks like, Becky, your camera's frozen as well, so I don't know if your internet might be having a bad connection.
Okay. So it might be the case that because it's quite a large data set that it is struggling. So I think what I will do is effectively I'll have to end it there. I think generally a tip that I would give if you are downloading a full data set is to convert it to a table. That's probably the best thing that you can do, to then use the filters to narrow down the data set. And what it will do is just shrink the data set down to a manageable size effectively. And then you can extract figures that are relevant for your local authority, but you can also clear all of those filters and then start from scratch if you want to look at neighbouring authorities and so on. So as I mentioned earlier, it's just a slightly more flexible method, especially if you're a bit more confident and you want to develop, you know, tables or charts or visualizations to put into reports and things like that. That can be the sort of the preferred method. But I'll leave it there so that Teams doesn't explode. And hopefully that should be helpful in navigating sort of similar pages, government pages, to find local data for your reading advocacy work. The same kind of pattern applies across most kind of education, health or demographic data sets. So once you can navigate something like that, then others should start to feel a little bit easier. And I will hand over to my colleague Kate, who will be able to take you through sort of how to draw insights from published reports when maybe the data itself, the underlying data, is not available, and some kind of broader tips on kind of finding and using other local data sets.
Hi, Becky, thanks for that. I will try and do a very quick overview so that we don't eat into everybody's break, which I'm sure people are ready for after looking at all of those rows of data. So I'll just share my screen quickly and share a couple of slides. So I just wanted to talk to you very briefly about what happens if you are trying to access local data and it doesn't look like the screen that Becky has just shown you. For the vast majority of the links in the toolkit, it is linking to data sets. As Becky said, that's usually what's out there. But for some of them, especially the ones that are slightly more niche, like I'm about to give you an example about in the employment and economic growth section. So it's looking at the costs of low literacy and the impact that has on things like wage differentials. Sometimes they're available in reports which have maybe been published by the third sector or academics, and they're a little bit of a different beast to deal with because you can't usually access the raw data itself. So you have to find the information that you want in the report, and you have to deal with there being just what there is, and it might not be in that ideal format that you would like it. So the first thing you want to do is you want to open the link to the report. As Becky said, we have tried to be helpful in the toolkit and put in the page numbers when it is a report for the part that has, you know, a regional breakdown or a local authority breakdown. It's usually a regional breakdown at this level because local authority is quite a lot of work. But if we don't have the page link, or if you have found a report yourself, I would say save a lot of time to do something like press Control F and search keywords. If you know the statistic you're searching for, like a wage differential, you can search for that. But in general, it's probably quicker to search for things like local authority, region, regional, or even put in an example like Southwest or Cornwall and see if you get any hits. If not, you can look in the index, in the contents, or sometimes scroll to the end of the appendix, which where sometimes the data tables are published. And how will you know when you have found what you're looking for? Sometimes it is in a text, like in a bullet point list or in a paragraph, but sometimes to try and break up all this text, the reports will publish it in various different formats. So it might be in a table, like on the right hand of the screen. It might be in a chart. It might look like a map. I mean, that's usually a very good indicator that you found some data that has been broken down by a geographical level that's more useful. And then usually what you can see is what you can get. You can't really break it down any further. If you need it to be in a slightly different format, like let's say on the right hand side here, we've got estimated wage differentials, but it's broken down both by region and by age group. I would say be careful at trying to do any sums yourself because you don't know how many people are in the age groups themselves. So if you're trying to work out an average, it can be a bit of a pitfall to fall in. I think you've either got to work with the data that you have or have a look around and see if in the text above or the text below they mention an overall figure. But these are the sort of things that you are looking for, and then you just pull the figure out and you cite the report as a whole. And usually this would come in terms of the making the need. So you would say this is why it's important. We have got in this region in the Northwest, we've got a wage differential of this much. And then you go back to the toolkit, to the impact section and say, well, reading for pleasure has been shown nationally. It's okay to layer the different geographical levels to make an impact. And that is why we think that, you know, funding should be put forward to do this. It aligns with local goals for addressing inequality or, you know, that sort of thing. And then finally, before I think we have a chance for a Q&A, and then I think we're going for a break, just some top tips, which we can send around the slides afterwards, because we've mentioned most of these. But if you get stuck, so Becky mentioned there's usually guidance on the website itself. It is if it's a government website. You can also look on YouTube for walkthrough tutorials. You might not find it for the exact data set, but if you look at who's published the data set, like DFE, ONS, NOMIS, often sometimes they come from university modules, but often people do walkthroughs and you can try and follow along. You can check the other files. Becky showed you there's lots that you can download, so sometimes you think it's one and it's not, or, you know, just exit and start again if suddenly everything goes awry in the Excel sheet. And one final word of warning before we go about AI summaries. If you are searching for data yourself, or let's say Becky mentioned that, for example, the one she showed, it didn't have the Welsh data. Actually, on a note of for the Welsh data, we are in the process of creating a toolkit specifically for Wales, so that will be coming. But if you're in a devolved government and you're looking for an alternative, sometimes when you type it in, the Google AI summary will tell you what it is, but I would be very wary about accepting that as truth. If you want, you can click on the source link itself and check. Or if you are somebody who uses AI and you're confident with AI, if you ask it kind of questions like, how can I download this data, or what data is there for this? And then you follow the link to the source data, look with your own eyes at what it actually says, so you know that it is pulling the correct data, then that's maybe all right. But the summaries themselves, I would say, go and check. But yes, on that note, I think we are moving on to a Q&A now, but someone tell me if that is wrong.
No, that's right. Thank you, Becky and Kate. Yeah, so we'll open it up to Q&A either with hands or if you'd like to pop some questions in the chat. I just wanted to, while we're doing that, just to say, in our evidence review and mapping for the toolkit, we found really, really patchy uses of local data across different local authorities. Some are fantastic. It's all there together in one place. It's really clear, a very obvious roundup of local data and insights along those lines and areas that might speak to those local priorities or the different national data sets that we've highlighted. Others had very, very little gathered together. It was sitting in different places. It wasn't clear what it was or when it was from. And oftentimes, even where local data was packaged up in that way, it was out of date. So our aim with this walkthrough and with putting those links in to those original sources, and especially to those government sources and the government data sets that Becky was taking us through, was to help you, point you towards where you can find those if you can't find it already on your council website, for example, or within your council unpublished data sets. And also to be able to look at it in different ways. So the one that Becky I could see where you were going with that and trying to show us there where computer couldn't quite cope with the 90,000 rows, was that it does have different measures in there around gender or ethnicity or area of deprivation within the local authority. So you can look at children who might be or adults or different groups that might be in more need or experiencing different needs as compared to that overall top line data set that might be in your on that council website. So just to give a little bit of context there around what those sites can be useful for too. I don't see any questions in the chat, but I'm happy to take them if people are typing them or if anybody would like to raise a hand. Sarah.
I'll just say thank you, because I just had no idea about just how much data you could customize locally, and I think so. I just thinking, for me, I just want to go away and have a play now, just to kind of get my head around all of that data, and so I suspect other people might as well. But I think it's really, really helpful and really useful to be taken through it as well, because often when you're faced with a screen like that, you just think it's too overwhelming and I won't go there. So actually, to be shown how actually once you get used to it, it's really straightforward, isn't it? But yeah, thank you.
And we might have stunned you all into silence with all of the local data here. Yeah, I can see a person in the chat saying useful, but feeling a bit overwhelmed. You will get a recording to this so you can watch it back later. We're also aiming to put through a few more really practical walkthroughs on our website. So that is there accessible for you to be able to go to. If people might find specific training sessions useful, that's something that we could look to as well. So some ideas for that. So I see one question in the chat and another hand here. I saw the one come through in the chat first, so I'll go to that and then we'll go to Karen. What a great tool, really useful. Will there be a support team for it for a period going forwards, checking for broken links? And those broken links, I mean, in the time since we published to now, we've realized one of the links is broken already. And it was definitely working because I was using it actively then, and as of February, it's broken. So we have been discussing about how we are going to be doing that and future proofing. I think there's two different ways to do that. So one is to be able to make sure that we're updating where we can, and having that really accessible so that it's something that you can go and check to, but also as Kate put in the chat here, publishing a version with a full bibliography with full names of data sources, publishers, dates, so that if something does break, if that link is broken, the source will still be there somewhere, so you can copy paste the rest of that information, stick that into Google, and then that should take you to the fresh link. So that's where we are now on how we're going to be doing that. We are also, here at the end of an email address, if there are issues that you've noticed or something that you've tried to access and it's been broken for you already, then please do get in touch and let us know about that. Karen.
Hello. It's just a quick thing. I really appreciate the training day. It's very informative. I'd like to go and sort of like pass it on to my teams and associated teams, departments. However, the recordings that get sent, I seem to be hitting a wall where it says I'm not part of the organisation. So is there another way it can be sent out? So that we can sort of like review it, even if it's just a transcript, because I can't even open that these days. So I don't know if it's a problem with my authority or but it's been happening with all of the reading agency or libraries connected.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder sometimes if that happens when we send out in bulk, and I know that some people can't access if you send it in bulk. So maybe just we could try sending it direct to you, Karen, and
that would be appreciated.
And see if that works. Or we could at least test it, couldn't we, and just see whether that might work. So
well, it does give me a message that I'm outside of the organisation. So I think it's your team's linking. Sort of like it's a walled garden and you have to allow permissions or something in some capacity, but I don't know how. But anyway.
Are you signed up to the our member platform?
Yes.
You are, so that shouldn't be a problem. Okay, well let's try that and see what happens. We'll find a way. We'll definitely find a way.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
And Lauren, I'll get you to make a note so that we don't forget Karen. So. Oh, and Lindsay. That's interesting, isn't it?
That is interesting. Oh, thanks, Lindsay. I will. Oh, actually, I was going to say I'll pass that on to my comms team, but one member of our comms team is here in the room.
I would say IT in local authorities can be an issue. I couldn't even access the World Book Day webpage because it's completely locked. We can't get into it. And my IT department want me to write a business case argument for accessing reading agency information, for accessing the World Book Day. And you there's just not enough time in the day to do that. So I emailed myself, I forward the email to my own personal email. I then log on at home and I can access it from home. So I do think it's something to do with local authorities and what they do and don't allow. I think sometimes the communications, particularly from the reading agency, look like spam.
Oh.
For our ITs, if that helps anybody.
I can't, Alex, I don't know if you have any comments or just we'll look into
There's
it
somebody
on
else.
Our sides. Yeah.
Lots of people are saying the firewalls block it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've trialed various different systems like Microsoft and Google, and yeah, it's frustrating that none of them seem to. Yeah, all of them seem to be getting caught one way or another. So I think that's something we can also take to our IT team and have a conversation with them about, because I'm sure there must be a solution. And sorry that keeps happening. That's very frustrating.
I don't suppose you use OneDrive, do you? Is it possible to put it into OneDrive and give us access to a OneDrive? That might work.
Yeah, we do use OneDrive, so yeah, we can absolutely do that.
Thank you.
Oh, challenges accessing the National Year of Reading Toolkit. Right.
Oh.
Thank you.
Queen, someone's asked whether there'll be someone's asked you just said whether there's a Scottish data set that
we would be very keen to do so. Right now we don't have any funding to be able to do so, but it's something we're really keen to explore. And I think as Kate mentioned, we're in the midst of preparing a version for Wales with more of that Welsh context. But Scotland it's an ambition for us, so we do hope to, but nothing in the works quite yet. But as soon as we know, we will let you know. I also saw in the chat we had a request for potentially some future webinars focused on specific data sets or putting together different resources. I've responded in the chat, but just saying that's something that we had been thinking about. So if there is appetite for it, it's something we're really keen to explore. So if you've got ideas for future topics that you'd like to see focused on or specific data sets you'd like a walkthrough on, then do let us know. And once we see what that kind of program of training might look like or program of support, then we will be in touch about it as well. Hopefully in touch in a way that gets into your inboxes based on the discussion we just had. Any other questions? Well, I'll let you percolate. If you do have other questions over the next few minutes, then do pop them in the chat. And we can, maybe see if there's time at the end, we could return to those. If not, we'll answer them via email. But I think everybody now has probably quite a bit of data come their way, quite a lot of focus and attention here. So I'm delighted to send you off to a break. I think we've got 5 minutes. Is that right, Sarah?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So if we could be back by just after 3, so about 2 minutes past 3, to be precise, to give it 5 minutes, if that would be okay, and then we'll hand over to the case study libraries. So yeah, that'd be brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'll just give everyone a few seconds to come back. Just by way of introductions, my name's Alex, and I'm the Senior Marketing and Comms Manager for the Reading Agency. So yeah, it's going to introduce our next session. So for the next 10 minutes or so, we're going to hear from two kind of real-world case studies, Camden Libraries and West Sussex County Council Library Service. And they're going to be talking us through some kind of local challenges, who they aim to influence, and how evidence and user stories have been driving kind of tangible outcomes locally. So without further ado, I will hand over to Fiona Tarn, Head of Camden Libraries, and share my screen.
Thanks, Alex. Hi, everyone. Good to be here with you. So Camden Libraries have an all-age, all-borough, cross-borough reading strategy, which is called Camden Reading Together. So it's a 5-year strategy. Next screen, Alex, please. So how did this all come about? So just a bit of context about Camden. So Camden's a North London borough. It's probably one of the smaller boroughs in London. A population of 210,000. Back in 24-25, we had visitor numbers around the sort of 600-700,000 mark. We're now looking at physical visits of just over 900,000 a year, and I do think that the work that we've done on the reading strategy has firmly put us in that place. The history to, before the reading strategy happened was that one of my colleagues went to a Libraries Connected, the seminar, the annual seminar, met Karina and Debbie from the reading agency. She came back and was all enthusiastic, had been totally inspired by that session, and said to me, we need to think about the work around reading. Reading is core to our business. It's so important. And as we've just heard from sort of Karina, Sarah, James earlier, reading impacts, all aspects of everybody's life, as we all know. So it has impacts on health and well-being, skills, economic prosperity, as well as being a pleasurable thing to do and just allowing you to sort of go into your own imagination. So my colleague came back all enthused and said we need to try and write a reading strategy. So we put our heads together and thought, well, how can we do this? So we worked closely with Karina and Debbie on writing a reading strategy for Camden. So we commissioned them, and I was very lucky when I came to Camden. I was given a revenue pot that I could use to develop the service, because the service hadn't really recovered from the pandemic. So I was very lucky in that respect, but if I hadn't had that pot of money, I would have probably looked to community infrastructure levy funding, which I have been successful in applying for other projects. So we got a pot of money and we commissioned a piece of work with the reading agency, which led to a lot of stakeholder engagement. The service was already linking really well with partners, but this piece of work really gave it a focus, and it was a focus around our core business of reading. But it was really important that we broadened it beyond libraries. It was really important to broaden it to link with internal partners and external partners. So I've listed a few there: the British Library, Book Trust, Books Beyond Words, City Lit. So this piece of work really sort of galvanised those relationships and strengthened them. So we were lucky in that we had Karina's time to do some roundtables with those stakeholders and really talk to them. Libraries didn't actually get involved in that. It was a conversation that Karina had with those partners, talking about the importance of reading, what those partners felt they could bring to the table, if we had an all borough-wide, all-age reading strategy. And Karina also developed a lot of that, what we've just been listening to, the whole number crunching and analysis of data. Karina actually did that with us and for us, but also I'm very lucky in Camden that we've got a data insight impacts team, and I think nearly all of them are actually champions for libraries anyway. I think they already were, so I'm very lucky to have that team internally who've also done a lot of analysis of the census data, the demographics in the borough, which has informed the strategy as well. So I'm very blessed in Camden to have that team too. Next slide, Alex. So thinking about the challenge was definitely the libraries coming out of the pandemic. The library service in Camden was struggling to recover, as I say. So I had a challenge on my hands to demonstrate the role of libraries with senior management, politically, and also externally, and with internal teams as well. So the challenge was raising the profile of the library service, but also raising the importance of literacy and how it touches people's lives, and how if their literacy levels increase, everything else improves for them as well. So that was the challenge, making that narrative and people listening to that. So as I say, we were trying to influence senior management, internal teams, external partners, and the political leaders as well. So how have we done this? So writing the strategy, and having it sounds silly, but having a hard copy document that you can hand to people when you're meeting with them, when you're in different scenarios. So having a physical document as well as the digital version has really helped, and really supported us to make that argument. It gives a focus to every conversation that you have. So every meeting that you can go into, you have something that you can say, well, look, we've done this piece of work. It's built on evidence, and if we go along with the action plan that's sitting underneath this strategy, this is the positive impact it can have on residents. So yeah, it's that doing this piece of work has been really key to sort of lifting the library service up in so many ways. We've actually, every year we have an annual staff conference. So just after we'd completed the piece of work, we centred our staff conference that year on the reading strategy. We invited senior leaders from the council. We invited external partners like DCMS, Arts Council, the Reading Agency. Karina presented at that staff conference. So it's thinking of ways of like just lifting the service up through this work. So the piece, by having the reading strategy as well, it's actually given us a springboard. So because of the reading strategy, we've now working on a funded program with the Reading Agency, funded by the Mercer's Fund. So that's chatterbooks, delivering chatterbooks within libraries and in schools. We were offered the extension to the Summer Reading Challenge funding. We pitched for the LGA pilot for Talk With Your Toddler, and because we were able to say we've got a reading strategy, here it is, and this is what we're aiming to do, it just opens more and more doors. It's like a snowball effect is what we found. I was also able to apply for local community infrastructure levy funding for a health and wellbeing librarian who's now helping to deliver the strategy. So I think, once you've got a piece of work that you can really demonstrate and present to people, it just supports you to be able to build on the positive work and make that case to senior management and politically. And because we presented and developed the reading strategy to our portfolio holder, she then said, well, actually that this is fantastic, but also what about a library strategy? So we've now developed a library specific strategy for the next 5 years too, just because we raised our profile to the portfolio holder in that way. There's been a number of really positive things that already in year one that have come out from the reading strategy. We've now got the delivery plan. We still meet with a steering group quarterly. So all those partners, external, internal, we come together quarterly and say, where have we got to and where do we want to go next? So some of the things that have happened because of the strategy, we've launched the Imagination Library, which has been funded in Camden. So that's the Dollywood Foundation project, which delivers a free book to the families that register. Their children get a free book every month till their children are 5 years of age. So again, it's just thinking of ways of getting books and literacy out there to families that may not naturally go to libraries or to family hubs. We've worked with the Children's Book Project, so we collect books, donated books for the Children's Book Project. They then take those books, curate them, go into schools and hand the books to families that may not access books in any other way. And we've used some of those donated books to make pop-ups in leisure centres and GP surgeries. We now visit the Euston Book Bank. Adult Learning came to us just 2 weeks ago and said, we're part of the steering group. We know, about the strategy. We now want to run ESOL reading groups in the libraries because of that strategy. So there's so many ways that this piece of work has actually benefited the library service, but also obviously benefiting the residents as well. And I think that's all from me. But the next slide is just my contact details. Very happy for anybody who wants to find out more about the work that we're doing in Camden. Please just reach out.
Thanks so much, Fiona. Yeah, what's so inspiring to hear about those new partnerships and that really kind of innovative way of working across authority. That's fascinating. Thank you very much. I'm next going to introduce Katie Gledhill, who's the lead manager for West Sussex County Council Library Services, who's going to talk through making the case for reading locally there.
Hello, thank you. I'm Katie. I think the reason I'm here today is because I was really excited when the toolkit came out from the Reading Agency at the beginning of the year, and I let them know how useful I thought it would be, and then they were interested to know how I might be using it day to day. So they've asked me to come and talk about my thoughts on that. So that's what I'll be doing. So first slide, thank you. I think the first thing to say was just how useful it was to have one document that brings together the wealth of reports and research that have been published in recent years, both those that are about the power of reading and the proven benefits, but also those about the social value of libraries more generally, and also to have those key statistics from places like the Department of Education or the ONS about national literacy levels and levels of loneliness. And now we've seen this morning how we can find those local data sets as well to make that even more pertinent, and that's even better. I think we're all quite time poor and stretched in libraries and pulled in lots of different directions, so it can be hard to keep track of all the new research and evidence that's been published. So to have one place that collates all of this and gives us clear headlines from each, and then tailoring them to different audiences within our local authority is just really valuable. Next slide. I think the other thing that hit me was that it was just a case of really good timing when we received the toolkit. From a local perspective, we've just celebrated our centenary year, which gave us a really good opportunity to raise our profile at West Sussex. We really milked that birthday for all it was worth. And we also took the opportunity to launch a library strategy. So we've got a more raised profile, not just with customers, but also with our corporate colleagues and our elected members and decision makers. So now it feels like a really good time to build on that increased visibility within the council and to be able to demonstrate with evidence the value that libraries can add to strategic priorities. It was also really good to receive such a practical guide right at the start of the National Year of Reading, so that when we can approach partners and colleagues to talk about our own National Year of Reading activities, we could relate them back to the evidence about why the work was so important. And we have had some of the county council colleagues contact us, like from Adult Learning, saying it's National Year of Reading, what a library's up to, and it's been a really good opening conversation, and having all of this in our armour has been really good timing. I think also in the context of local government reorganisation, which many authorities may be having conversations about at the moment, it's really good to be able to bring into the room where we might be meeting with council colleagues, district and boroughs, or perhaps even consultants, when we're trying to articulate who we are and what we do and why. Having some of this evidence is really useful. And then finally, with the local elections that are looming in May, I think it's going to be helpful. We always have to induct new members as part of their induction to talk about libraries and who we are, and having something that talks about the tangible benefits of reading is really going to be good as well. So that was why I thought it was particularly good timing. Next slide. We also want to use this document with our staff, and I think that's staff at all different levels. So with our frontline staff, I think it's always good to give context as to why we do the things that we do, whether that's a baby rhyme time or the story times that are being delivered from all of our libraries. If we can talk about how sharing stories helps children to develop language, attention, memory and confidence, and sets foundation for success at school and beyond, I think it's really valuable to give the sort of the confidence, a bit like you were saying, reading is not just a nice to have. I think a rhyme time is not just a nice to have, it's also great for parental mental health, tackling feelings of isolation, and then all of that language and learning. And I think that's the kind of sort of headline information that we can give to new members of staff, but also when we do our refresher training. And then it's a good document for staff in more senior roles to feel that they're armed with really up-to-date information when they're meeting with local partners, council colleagues and so on. We often have elected members come and look around library buildings, and our local managers are really skilled at being able to talk about what their local offer is and talk about their library, but they don't always feel so confident talking about the bigger picture and how that work relates to council priorities. So having a few key sound bites or pieces of data I think is really useful. And we also get invited onto local radio, or we had somebody this morning talking about World Book Day on a local radio station. And obviously they'll be talking about all of the work we're doing today in our libraries, but actually just a couple of little sound bites about literacy levels and children's reading is really great. So I think we've always had things that we can say, but just bringing it together and having really up-to-date good evidence is really brilliant. Next slide, thank you. So we've been thinking about running some lunch and learns with other departments in the council, talking about how reading is really relevant to their work. And going into sort of team meetings in adult services, children's, that kind of thing. And one sort of very specific example we have is the work that we've just been doing with public health. So West Sussex have just produced a joint local and wellbeing strategy setting out their key priorities for the next 5 years. And I think there are 5 big strategic aims, one of which is school readiness. So we made an approach to public health to talk to them about this priority and see how we could work with them in this National Year of Reading to reach those parents of 0 to 5, which is obviously a demographic that's been identified in the National Year of Reading and a group that we all want to engage with. So we were able to tell them about all the things we already do for this cohort of our community, all the resources that we have for early years, but we were also able to use some of the data in the toolkit to add evidence to a business case that they were putting together, and to weave in how we might receive some public health funding to deliver a new initiative to reach 0 to 5s. So we've been able to come up with a sort of an idea where we will deliver some starting school packs that can be delivered via libraries, but also through outreach. So the ones that we'll deliver through libraries will have lendable school book bags that will have a book about starting school, a toy that will have some learning element, and then signposting information and leaflets. And they'll also be lent out through our book buses that will go to visit early years settings. And then we'll also create some mini packs that we can gift via specialist health partners and food banks and sort of external venues that will have a book that can be kept and also a toy, but also information crucially about how to join the library with a QR code and information about all the things that the library can offer. And after that, they then came back to us and said, actually, we've also got issues with children's continence when they start school, and can we do some packs around toilet training? So we're now looking to do some ones about potty training as well, with hints and tips for parents and related books. So that's just one example, really, of a new initiative that we've been able to launch. But I'm really confident that there'll be lots more that we can do. And we're really trying to think about tailoring the information about economic growth and job seeking, and how reading isn't always the obvious bedfellow impacts the same way it is with something like public health. But we're ready to think about how we can start those conversations. And I think National Year of Reading gives us a really good reason to go to them. I think in the way that Fiona was saying, it's nice to be able to hand that reading strategy to a colleague. I think National Year of Reading hopefully might open some doors for us to say, here's who we are. And then obviously all of this this evidence that we can pull out using the template email that are in the toolkit, or taking those key messages and bringing them into those meetings is just going to be really helpful.
Thank you very much, Katie. Yeah, and really interesting to hear about, yeah, how it's not only been useful for those kind of decision makers and budget holders, but actually how it can support with yeah, with inducting frontline staff as well. That's really exciting to hear. Great. Okay, so thank you both. And now that, yeah, everyone's had a chance to kind of see how the toolkit's structured and hear really brilliantly from Fiona and Katie how you can use it kind of on a local level, we wanted to give a bit of time for you to think about how you might use it. So we know that every library service is different. We've all got different priorities, different stakeholders, various different pressures. And the toolkit really is designed to flex around that. So for the kind of last few minutes of today's session, we thought we'd give you some time to take what you've heard today and make it relevant to you and your local context. So we're just going to work through a very short activity together. And by the end of it, you'll have identified a specific person that you'd like to influence locally, found the right part of the toolkit to support that conversation, and have a clear message and call to action to take away with you. So hopefully something concrete that you can actually kind of go away and use following our session today. So there are no kind of right or wrong answers here, and it's not a test, it's just about making the toolkit work for your situation. So the link to the toolkit, I will just relink that in the chat so that everyone's got that handy. Great. And we'll talk through this step by step. So if everyone could just grab a pen and paper or open a Word document or whatever you'd like to do. And this is just going to be a kind of personal exercise that we're going to run through. Okay, so if everyone could open up the toolkit and head to page 3, which lists the 5 different priority areas in the toolkit. And yeah, if you take about 30 seconds, just look through those 5 priority areas and pick the one that is most relevant to your current context or a conversation that you're having at the moment. Where do you see the biggest opportunity, or where do you think your conversation with stakeholders is most pressing at the moment? I appreciate you might say all of them, but for this exercise, let's just pick a priority. And once you've selected yours, if you just make a note of it, either on a pen and paper or on a Word document, whichever. Okay, I'm going to whiz off through to the next step because I'm conscious of time. So step 2 is thinking about who that person is. Who do you most need to influence right now? So that might be an elected councillor, public health lead, an education partner, budget holder, and you can be really specific here. This is a personal exercise, so if you can and you want to name that person specifically or name that role, jot that down as well. Okay, has everyone had a chance to think about that? Sorry, I'm doing this at breakneck speed, but okay. So now the final step is to plan your approach. So using the relevant section of the toolkit, we'd like you to work through these questions and we'll circulate these afterwards. So if you don't have time to fully flesh this out now, we'll circulate this for you to kind of go away and think about. But we'd like you to kind of think about which toolkit section will you use. So find the priority area that matches your target's concerns. Having a look at those key messages in that section of the toolkit, think about which one is most relevant. What's that key message that you'd like to take away? And can you adapt any of that national evidence with a local stat or local story from your library? And then finally, what is your call to action? What's the one thing that you want them to do or agree to? And I'll give everyone a couple of minutes just to make some kind of notes for the time being. And then, as I said, we'll circulate this for you to take away and think about following the session today as well. Okay, I appreciate that was not very much time at all to do that part of the activity, but we'll leave that. Hopefully you've started to kind of find the bit of the toolkits that's most relevant and start to kind of see what some of those key messages might look like. The idea that is that following this, you'll have a bit of an advocacy plan. So it will allow you to, as you've kind of identified those relevant parts, you'll be able to kind of fill out this: who is my target, which is the toolkit section I'm using, what's my key message, and what's my call to action. So as I said, we'll circulate this activity for you to kind of go away with, and we would love to potentially create some kind of follow-up resource, including all of your examples and how you might kind of adapt the toolkit locally. So we'll put our contact details on the final slide, and if you're happy to share those plans once you've gone away and had some more time to think about them, yeah, we think that could be a really valuable resource for the sector. So yeah, we would love to share those if you're happy to. Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, just to say, just to round up really, and well done for whizzing through that so quickly. So I think for me, the sort of key takeaways really has been that advocacy works best when it's evidence-led and it's aligned to local priorities. We've seen that particularly through the case studies, you know, how important that is and how different those two case studies were, but both using all those evidence-led and advocacy tools, and that you're clear about what you actually want. So that's great to have that workshop at the end, even though it was at breakneck speed, to think about what your ask is, and hopefully using the toolkit will make that a lot easier and more consistent. I think the importance of having all that in one place is just so powerful. So the toolkit, you've got access to the toolkit now. It's also on the Reading Agency resources page. If you just go down to 1st of January 2026, that's where it is. So please do have a go at that and choose your priority areas and your stakeholder, and take one practical action quite soon using the toolkit would be brilliant. And if you do need further support, as Alex and Karina has said, the Reading Agency is there with drop-ins and advice and resources. And of course, Libraries Connected will support with advocacy, national messaging, sharing good practice and so on. And also just to say that this is the first in a series of webinars that we are running either in partnership such as this one with the Reading Agency or on our own, or you know, with great good practice from the sector. We're looking at future ones. We're looking at one that we're calling What is Reading, with Professor Teresa Kremin and a couple of other speakers in May. And then we're looking at reading and wellbeing, probably again with the Reading Agency and some other colleagues. We're looking at measuring the impact of reading, and we're also looking at adult literacy. So we'll be spreading those through the year. So if you've got any other thoughts about webinars around reading in this National Year of Reading you particularly want, do share with us. But it just goes to finally for me to say thank you so much for the Reading Agency for putting together that toolkit, which I think will be absolutely amazing, amazingly useful, not just for this year, but for many years to come. So really appreciate that, and thanks to Arts Council for making it possible, and thanks for our speakers today, so James, Karina, Becky, Kate, Fiona, Katie and Alex, and also thanks to Lauren for keeping everything on the road today and making sure everyone can get in, Lauren, and also making all the bookings and so on. So just a big thank you to everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy the rest of World Book Day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.